Okay, well, I think we can go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome to Officiants Online, a virtual forum for professional wedding officiants to share their expertise. I'm Marissa. I'm the marketing and events coordinator at AMM, and I'm here with my co-host Jessica, AMM's lead writer, who will be helping out behind the scenes. So please send her a message if you have any technical questions. We're very excited for a special segment today. Today's segment is both the first Officiants Online session of 2025, and it acts as a virtual launch party for AMM's newest virtual officiant course, the AMM Interfaith and Multicultural Weddings course. So today we'll have our course creator, Reverend Doctor Samora Smith, on to give a discussion on interfaith and multicultural weddings, their importance in today's wedding industry, and a few best practices in preparing to officiate an interfaith or multicultural ceremony. After that, Dr. Samora will give a brief talk on her intentions on process and developing the course's program, and she will give you a sneak peek at what the course is all about. So this online training course has been in the process. It's a labor of love from us over here at AMM in collaboration with Reverend Dr. Samora. Now, she is an expert interfaith wedding officiant. Dr. Samora acts as the associate director at the new seminary for interfaith studies in New York, and she's also the director of the Interfaith Temple. So in this unique training course, you'll discover a wide array of rituals and ceremony elements used in interfaith and multicultural weddings worldwide. And you'll learn how to perform and incorporate these practices into the weddings and elopements you officiate. So this class is designed for beginner wedding officiants and seasoned wedding pros and everyone in between. As of today, the course is now available for purchase or on the AMM site, but as we begun this virtual event, you should have received an email in your inbox containing a 50% off discount code. This code will be active for the next month, so by the end of March, it'll be expired, but for a whole month, you get to save 50% off the course. And now we want to take just a moment and allow for people to locate that email in your inbox. I know I have it in mind, so let me pull that up real quick. And yes, so that's going to be titled the Interfaith and Multicultural Course Discount Code. If you can't find the email, I will double check your spam folder, or since you're already here, you can write down the code that we will put in the chat. The code is Launch 2025. Once again, that's Launch 2025, LAUNCH 2025, all caps and no spaces. Jessica will also be putting that code down in the chat, so if you'd like to copy and paste that, that'd be great. But now that you have your 50% off code, be sure to apply it at checkout for your discount on the course. And now that we got all that settled, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, who is also our course creator. Today, we're joined by Reverend Dr. Samora Smith, who, as I said before, is the Associate Director at the new Seminary for Interfaith Studies in New York, as well as the Director for the Interfaith Temple. Dr. Samora was born and raised in New York City and comes from a mixed and multi-faith background. Dr. Samora is also multi-talented. She's a musical artist with certifications in sound and vibrational healing. She created Common Ground Ceremony to bring people together and offer ceremonies in the spirit of inclusivity and love. Dr. Samora leads with an inclusive and welcoming approach and recently expanded her team to offer bilingual and Indigenous ceremonies. But without further ado, I'd like to pass things off to Dr. Samora so she can tell you a little bit more about her experience and her expertise. So, Dr. Samora, we'll have you.
Thank you so much, Marissa. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited that we finally are able to offer this course. And welcome, everyone. Let's just take a moment to check in with ourselves and gather here. I'm very grateful that each of you have turned up today for this. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how it came to be that this course was even created, because around, I think it was a couple summers ago, I was asked to come on the panel for one of the Officiant Accelerator programs in New York City. And we were trying to come up with what would be a great theme that I could offer. And it turned out that diversity and inclusive ceremony is really my specialty. It's what I've been born into. So it's a natural bridge for me to bring couples, families together based on what brings us together, which is in essence love, and beyond what our labels are, beyond what we call ourselves, what connects us truly is our love for each other. And the timing for this couldn't be, more amazing. The fact that, here we are having a global just energy around diversity, the conversations around, what is inclusivity, what does it mean to have unity in the world. And as an officiant, I really feel that it's a blessing to be able to offer an opportunity to your couples to have a person that sees them and identifies with the need for people to feel included, no matter what their beliefs. So this is not, in a sense, a religious program. It's more about what people, where meeting people where they are, like allowing people to come as they are and holding that space for them in a sacred moment, like such as a wedding or a blessing or any sort of important moment that happens in our lives. So before I talk about the course specifically, what I'd love to do is a little bit of a demonstration of what I do, who I am, and so that you could get more of a sense of my background and what I bring to this forum. So I'm going to share my screen and do a little presentation. So I titled this Celebrating Love Beyond Boundaries. So multiculturalism, I just wanted to speak about the definition. Multiculturalism recognizes that diversity is a strength, not a threat. It fosters a sense of belonging and social cohesion by promoting acceptance, understanding, and equal opportunities for individuals of all cultural backgrounds. So my interfaith journey, I was born, as Marissa mentioned earlier, into a multi-faith, multicultural family. And if I may go into the specifics, my mom was culturally Jewish, my father was Muslim, my stepfather who raised me was Catholic. And as a child, I learned that everyone is connected with something, that there's nothing that you can't find in common with anyone. And that's how my family, we sat around, we respected our differences. And as I got older, I was always into the arts and creative arts. And as I got older, I realized that what I wanted to do was just find my own path and find out who I was. So around, I would say 25 years old, I started to go to different classes, and there was a pamphlet in this particular program in New York City. And at the back of the pamphlet was this ad for the new seminary. And it had all these faith symbols, and I was so curious, like, what does that mean and what is that? So when I looked deeper into it, I realized that it was a program that accepted people, no matter what their belief, could come and learn about spirituality and learn what brings us all together. And it was founded in 1979 by a rabbi and by Swami Satchidananda, who brought yoga, one of the yogis, to bring yoga to the United States. And they had a vision that one day there would be a time in the world where people would need clergy or spiritual leaders that saw us as one. And so that's been quite a blessing for me. I started my company called Common Ground Ceremonies back in 2010 to offer ceremonies to couples that come from all over. And as all of you know, New York City is sort of like a hub where, people from all over the world come. And many couples these days are meeting all over the world and online. So, what a perfect opportunity to offer an interfaith ceremony and also multicultural family because, or ceremony, I should say, because they come from everywhere. So that's kind of how I came to create Common Ground ceremonies. And now it's been 15 years. And in 2020, I became the associate director for the seminary that ordained me, which is incredible, really. So I'll move to the next slide. So what's the difference? Sometimes many of us, I would imagine that many of you started this path because you had a friend or a family member that might have asked you to perform their ceremony. And then possibly you were like, oh, this is great. So maybe this is something that I can continue to do as a career or as a side business. And a lot of the couples, are not interested in spirituality or religion, so to speak. So I just wanted to break down a tiny bit, what's the difference between when you're doing an interfaith ceremony as opposed to a spiritual ceremony. So spiritual that I notice, and I myself included, many couples are identifying as what they call SBNR, which is spiritual but not religious, or another term for it would be agnostic. And then they're comfortable with the mention of God or a higher power. They're also wanting to incorporate cultural elements or family traditions, and then may want a blessing or a prayer from a faith tradition. So that's oftentimes the definition of more of a spiritual, that there's something beyond us that has brought us here, and that within a ceremony that it is considered sacred. Now, with a religious ceremony, obviously there's certain clergy that are ordained for their particular faith, such as an imam, a rabbi, or a Catholic priest. I've often been approached by couples that may have been denied a Catholic ceremony either because they were of different faiths or possibly because they are no longer practicing. So they may come to have that service with someone like an interfaith minister. So also with the religious ceremony is usually performed in a church or a synagogue where a spiritual ceremony can happen anywhere. So that these are the differences. And then with a religious ceremony, they may use the Bible or a specific book. So there's prayers, rituals, and rites that are anticipated in that particular faith. Now, the beautiful thing is when you do an interfaith ceremony, a lot of times they'll say, well, can we just mix and match it? Does it have to be one or the other? Or one of the partners might not be religious and the other one is very religious, and you may want to, you know, craft something that respects more of the side that wants the religious elements. So I just wanted to break down that a little bit for you. And here are some questions that you can ask when you are working with any couple that might want a spiritual or a religious or an interfaith type ceremony. One would be, first, what do they see? What is their vision? Do they have a specific thing that they know that they want to do or that they don't want to do? That's very helpful to see if even you're a good match for them. Another question that I often ask is specifically, are there any cultural elements, right? Because sometimes things are considered religious, but then there's like something like breaking the glass is more of a cultural Jewish tradition, not necessarily based on anything that is inside of the Old Testament. So I always want to ask if they have any specific things that they want to include. And then three is, do they have support from their families? So is this going to be a thing where our job as the officiant, is it going to be a thing where we're going to show the common threads of their two faiths? Or is it a way to bring family together so that if they don't feel supported, then you want the languaging for the ceremony to be even more inclusive, even more engaging when it comes to showing what is common between the two of them. And then last, I have, are there any elements in your ceremony that require someone of your faith to perform? So for instance, not all of us obviously speak Arabic or, speak Hebrew, and maybe there's a family member that is fluent or feels comfortable coming up saying a certain prayer. I always feel that, when we're in a role of support, that it's important for us not to go beyond our own comfort and our own personal boundaries. So if there's a moment where you're being asked to do something that you're not comfortable with, that then instead of saying no, you can say, well, is there somebody, in your family or someone that can come up and do that specific ritual or prayer? And I want to talk about the course. So when I did the Officiant Accelerator program in New York City, afterwards, I just remember being so connected to AMM, loving what they stand for, loving the fact that it's not just some place that you get ordained. It's also a place where, they stand up for people's human rights and civil rights. And when I was thinking about it, I'm like, what if there's people that have become ordained in AMM and they want to continue, but they also might get asked to do certain things and don't have the reference point. So that's how essentially this course was born. And I just want to give you a quick idea of how we went about creating it. So what I did was a breakdown of many of the major faiths, but I also wanted to talk a bit about the cultural as well as indigenous and the pagan rituals. So there's little demonstrations on most of the major ones. And what you'll do is you'll have a moment where you'll learn about what is the history behind that particular faith. And then we'll have a demonstration of what could be used in that type of ceremony. And these are things that you can suggest to the couple if they don't already know. And there's also ways that you can find something common between if there are different faiths getting married, that you can pull those rituals together to really demonstrate, how our cultures are, very harmonious and work well together. So that's just a breakdown of the different videos and chapters that are contained inside of the course. And best practices, this is really very close to my heart and very, very important. I'll start with cultural sensitivity. I think it's essential to ensure that your couple, no matter what, feels respected, valued, and represented. And how you do that, I think, is understanding if it's not of your own culture, that you do some research and you do some um, just sensitivity training, like sort of get into what is the proper way to address certain things, to say certain things. I think that's very important. Another one is educate yourself to learn the significance and meaning behind each ritual or spiritual element. Many of these things were created as a way to connect us to the creator and to connect us to the higher power. And so many rituals that are created around love are really about the spirit that dwells between the couple, and bringing in prayer, bringing in ritual, doing a cleansing, any sort of thing that represents the cleaning of ourselves to then be prepared for that love that you're creating with another person is very sacred. So that's another thing, is to educate yourself behind, what does this mean, and why did this culture adapt this? What was happening when this ritual was created? Another one is approach each ceremony with an open mind and a willingness to create something heartfelt and inclusive. And as we know, all of us as officiants, that's really our goal, no matter what. No matter who we're standing with, who we're creating this for, that, we want everyone to feel as though our hearts were put into it. And so, especially around culture and diversity, it's very important that we represent that couple, that no matter what's happening out there, that we are there because we want to bring them together as a union. And then another one is be clear on your own beliefs and your values and suggest, as I mentioned earlier, having others perform any ritual or prayer that you're not comfortable with. It's so important to know yourself, to know what are you comfortable with, what feels right to you, not to just put a ritual in a ceremony because it thinks seems like it will be cool or seems like it represents something. Make sure that you know yourself and that you feel comfortable. And when you don't, I think it's fine to either say, is there someone else that can do it? Or maybe say that, maybe we're not the right match, and that is okay too. And lastly, use this course as a guide. It's a touch point. There's demonstrations on some rituals that you've already seen or maybe, had done at your own wedding. But then there's other ones that touch on the possible ones that you've never heard of or would like to learn more about. And if within this experience you feel as though you want to know more, and want to do more in terms of interfaith learning and interfaith approach, then by all means, I would definitely recommend finding a community that can support you in a deeper way with that. And lastly, I'll talk a little bit about my role in the world. I'm Reverend Doctor Samora, as Marissa mentioned earlier. I have my doctorate in ministry, which I received by the same seminary that I was ordained in 2008. I then got my doctorate in ministry in 2020 when everything was locked down. So it was a perfect time for me to study and really get to know myself better. And then in 2021, the director, Dr. J, invited me to become his associate director. And so I've been in that seat since then. And now I am the head of the Interfaith Temple, which is the hub where the students and the alumni and all the people can come together to offer, any kind of fun workshop. We don't do traditional religious ceremonies. It's more about creating a path of inclusivity and unity. I also do premarital coaching, and I created this AMM course, and I'm really grateful that Lewis was open to the idea, and I believe that it will really enrich your practice. If you know anyone that may not, be clear on what they want to include, it might even be something you can share with your own couples or with other wedding professionals. Um, and if you want to get in touch with me for any reason, I think the best way is to email me, which I will have Marissa share that. But also, my website is commongroundceremonies.plural.com. And my Instagram is Rev Doctor Samora. So from here, I would love to talk a bit or answer any questions that you might have.
Now, I did have a kind of more specific officiant question, especially kind of getting into, doing more interfaith and multicultural ceremonies as you're brand new to it. Now, for more ceremonies that have a few more props, that have a little bit more stage directions, do you find you need to kind of schedule a more in-depth rehearsal to kind of practice those, especially if you haven't done that particular ceremony in a professional setting before?
Yes, I definitely have found that early on, we're talking 15 years ago, I remember being so excited that I could do like all these different rituals and incorporate anything I wanted. And I also remember that moment when it's time for the ceremony to start. And I remember being a bit overwhelmed. So I definitely think that if you can have a rehearsal with the couple, that's wonderful. But even if you can't, I say put it in the script, make sure that everything is written out the way that you believe that it should go, and you should share it with them so that this way, if there's anything that's not representative of what you think it's supposed to be, that they can chime in a bit. And also, it's good to have props of your own. Obviously, not all of them, but I always require that the couple, supply if we're doing something like a lay ceremony or doing anything having to do with, the sacred, ritual type things. A lot of times the couple wants to keep those items and, have them as reminders of that day. But yes, I highly encourage practice.
Absolutely. Okay, that makes sense. Let's see, Jessica had another question. What are a few changes you've noticed in the intercultural and interfaith weddings since you started in 2010? Like, have you noticed any differences in trends, common themes, anything along that line?
I think the biggest thing that I've noticed is a lot of DIY. A lot of people just love celebration on their own terms. And what's beautiful about being from an interfaith approach, because a lot of times people are like, well, what is interfaith? Like, what is that exactly? But it's not a religion. It's an approach. It's saying that no matter, what your path is, I'm here to, somehow support, what that connection is to whatever that is. And so when you have a couple that one might be Jewish, one might be Catholic, and it's time for them to plan children, plan a family, plan any sort of, moment that is celebrated with the families. That's when they need us more than ever because they'll say, "Oh my gosh, like how do we incorporate both sides and still respect our, upbringing and respect, not insult anybody." And I think, to answer your question, what I've seen trend wise is more people just want to do it on their own terms. So they may want more love story commentary more so than ritual, but then when you put the ritual in, it brings that whole story together. And I've found that that's really been my greatest joy is seeing how that's evolved. But honestly, in New York City, it's kind of hard to even put a stamp on trend because people from everywhere, come and get married in New York City. And, I've done Korean ceremonies that, and I was surprised that they would ask somebody that culturally was different, but they really wanted to have something unique. And I believe that celebrating love can be done in so many different ways.
When other people are helping in the ceremony, like other faith leaders, etc., do you meet with them before? It's kind of, goes back to the rehearsal question, but especially if there's other people that are incorporated with, I'm sure you've had a few examples of that as well.
Yeah, I think it's important to feel comfortable with who you're going to be if you're co-officiating. Co-officiating can be tricky, just like with anything in life. You kind of want to know who this person is, what's their style. A lot of times people don't make the time to necessarily like meet, but if there's a way to say to the couple, listen, I understand that you're bringing in your rabbi or, bringing in someone to do this element. Is it okay if we at least hop on a Zoom or, is it okay if I send them, what I'm planning on saying so that they know, what the flow is going to be. I think winging it is never a good idea, especially because the couple is at the center of that's their day. And anything that we can do as officiants to ensure that it'll be smooth, I think is important.
That definitely makes a lot of sense. Okay,
Mhm.
we had a question from Dawn about the scope of the course, duration, cost, live or self-pay. So I'll kind of jump in there. We currently have the course listed for $75 on the AMM website. I'll have Jessica pop back in and go ahead and put the URL there so you can kind of have quick access to it. And it's broken down into different units. The units will give you kind of an introductory on in the background of the respective faith and culture that we're discussing, and they'll give you a demonstration as well. But those all are self-paced, so you can log out, log back in, click through as many times as you need. And we do have that discount code that is valid for 50% off that $75 from now until the end of March. So I would definitely take advantage of that now. Some more if you had any other input on like the way you design the course for people to kind of go through it.
Yeah, well, so I was in the course yesterday, and what I loved about it is that let's just say you have a lifetime access to it, and you happen to have a couple that's coming up in June that wants to do something Hindu oriented. You could just click on that chapter and go into there and learn a bit about the history there. And again, as I said in best practices, it's so important regardless of what is in this course, that you also do a deeper dive into, what this couple particularly wants. However, when you have something come up that's in that list, you can always refer there. You can always go there and sort of click on what's relevant to what you're doing at that time. I think it's a great resource because I used to be, in my books trying to like pick out readings and pick out, certain rituals to understand. Sometimes when you have a visual, it's so much easier. And obviously, we all do things differently. What I will say in the video that we created, we had a model couple. So they're not a married couple or an engaged couple, although the bride in in the video was actually engaged. Did she get married yet? I think she did. They were adorable. Um, but yeah, so it is very much like, a model sort of demo. So I'm not standing in the center of them the whole time in the videos, but it's really meant to be a demonstration. It's really meant to walk you through what you might want to do if you were to have that particular request.
Yeah, and something I love about the demonstration too is sometimes when you're brand new to this, you're like, where do I stand? What do I do with my hands? How do I instruct the couple? And it really helps break that down for those visual learners. And so you're not spending hours on the internet doing the research.
Yes, yes. And there's no audience in the video. So again, it's like, it's an opportunity for you to mirror what we're doing so that this way you can kind of picture yourself like, what would it feel like? What would I do in this scenario? And that way when you go to a rehearsal with the couple, you're not, just like for the first time doing it.
Most definitely. Okay, we had another question from Isaiah. How did you acquire and how long did it take for you to become a Reverend Doctor? What did it take?
All right. Well, funny enough, so back in 2006, that was when I put my application in. I had no idea why. I was not raised religious. I literally was like raised kind of like hippie family, love is love, everyone loves each other. And that's great because I'm still like that. But when I went to the school, I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, like I'm going back to school and now I have to study. And it was actually um an unfolding of my own relationship with whatever I believe life to be. It had nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with, um, accepting others for who they are. It was more like the curriculum was really about the unfolding of the I am, and a lot of what Dr. J and I do at the school now is really working on the ministry of presence. Literally, what is it to be present? And ministry is not necessarily a religious word. It means to be, to be of service, to be available to people. And so that's really what we teach. And the program right now, if it works with anyone's schedule, because obviously most people are busy, but we do live classes twice a month, and then we meet 3 times a year. And usually people can finish the program in a year. Sometimes people want to stay because they love the community, and we'll do the 2-year program. And then that's for the interfaith part. Then we have advanced degrees for people that might want to get a master's in divinity and a doctorate in ministry. I found that once I could put doctor in front of my name, that I got into more rooms, and not for my ego. It was more like I want to sit at the table of the people that can make some change and make some lasting difference in the community. And I really had no idea when I went in what it was going to be for, but I'm very grateful that I did because it really has enriched every single thing that I've done. And every single day, it's my wish and my intention to bring community together.
Great. And that was the Interfaith Seminary that you're.
That's the new seminary. So it's called the new seminary because, as I said, in 1979, when Rabbi Gelberman met Swami Satchidananda. Now, Swami, the funny story about him is, I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember the Woodstock Festival, but that was when, political duress was happening, the Vietnam War, all sorts of things. And I don't remember the number, but a lot of people showed up in upstate New York for this huge concert. And Swami, he's this guy from India in all white. He comes down from a helicopter like he's flying. He flies down to the stage and he blessed the concert. And both he and Rabbi, for totally different cultures, totally different faiths, they both had a vision when they were young that we are all one and that there's nothing that divides us. So when they met each other, they had these thick Hungarian and Indian accents, and they met at some I don't know, some forum in Canada, and they were brothers, instant brothers. And so when they got together and created the new seminary, it was new. And so it was something that, no one had ever heard of. No one could even possibly think that all people of different faiths could come and study together or even, be something like that. So that's really what the seed is of this movement. And it was essentially a movement more than anything.
Wow, that's beautiful. What a piece of history.
Yeah, yeah, and to stand on the shoulders is quite, I'm grateful every single day. And I know during this time, without getting into any sort of politics, this is a time when we all need to come together, from a vibration of love and unity. And I think we're lucky to have, a platform where that can actually, happen and it not be about politics. It's just about our divine connection, whatever that is.
Couldn't agree more. I love it. All right, Lisa wants to know how your couples typically find you. What's the best way that they reach out? What's your sources from?
That's a really good question. I think when I first started, I just did what everyone else was doing and I put my face up. I was very uncomfortable because the funny thing is I never intended on having a wedding ministry. I just like many of you, I married a friend of mine. She was very pregnant. I was very pregnant at the time, and she begged me. She's like, could you please perform my ceremony? So we did that, but I fell in love with the process. I fell in love with just the whole idea of holding that space for two people. And so I started out with, the template on Wedding Wire, the knot. I did those. This was back when I think that was really essentially the place everyone would go, and they were separate. They were not this big corporate, combined umbrella that they are now. And then after that, the marriage equality law passed in New York first, and then it went. And little did I know that, one of the things that I felt made me unique amongst my colleagues is that I was raised in a family where all my mother's best friends were gay couples. And as a child, I had no idea that that was strange. I just thought that that was like what people did. I didn't know that there was anything in society that, looked down upon that. So when I was doing my very first wedding from my template website, it was a straight couple, but the day that they booked me was the day of the law passing in New York. And I come to find out that the groom, his uncle, was the senator that pushed the law through on that same day. So here I am with goosebumps all over my body, saying to myself, this is why I said yes to this. Like, this is way beyond anything I could have even made up. And so from that point on, I felt that, that was why I said yes. So I had a floodgate of couples come for a good 5, 6 years. And I think after the pandemic, things shifted a lot in New York. and couples are doing things different, obviously, because many of you here were asked by couples to marry them as opposed to them going to clergy or finding someone on the knot or wedding wire. But now I think a lot of my work is through referral and through people that I've over the past 15 years. Now I'm blessing their babies and remarrying them for their vow renewals, things like that.
I love that. And yes, referrals are so huge in this industry, and I'm sure like that comes kind of along with the I'm some people might be asked to do a certain ceremony, and they might not be the right person, so then they might refer them to you and so on. So
Right. I think it's so smart to have a circle, to have a circle. They don't even have to be officiants. They can all be of different, services in your area. Like get to know your venues that you love, get to know the photographers, get to know just the people that you would consider referring yourself. Like never pick a group that you don't align with. I think I made that mistake. I wanted to marry everybody, serve everybody, show up for everybody. And I learned very quickly that that's not our path. Our path is to be true to ourselves. And then the people, it's like grow the garden and they will show up. And I do feel that that's worked well for me.
so kind of along that line, if a couple does want a ritual tradition you haven't heard of before, what's your first response? How do you respond to that? Where do you go from there?
If it's something you've never heard of before.
Yeah.
Well, here I am. You can reach out to me as one of your circle people as a reference if it's something you're unfamiliar with. But we tried our best, Marissa and I tried our best to choose um, a lot of the main ones that people might ask for, or it makes you look even more like, on top of your game when you can suggest something and they'll be like, wow, how do you know about that? So, like I said, education is everything, and there are some really great reference books out there on interfaith weddings. So there's scripts, there's all sorts of things, but I always say put your signature on it, but at the same time, if you're going to offer something, make sure you're educated about it.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let's see. Deborah asked, you mentioned premarital coaching,
Mm.
as an officiant to be, is it necessary to be a coach as an officiant and vice versa, or is it just something you added?
I think I found that, especially, okay, so what really sparked it was when I was marrying all of my LGBTQ couples. Okay. Now, remember, when that law passed, there was like
Mhm.
a wave of a ton of people that were like, okay, we can, so we should. And that's okay. I understand the excitement of knowing that you can do something, so why not do it? But what I also found is that there's no map, right? There was no there was no way for many of the couples to understand what marriage would look like. It's one thing to fantasize about the foreverness of love and of your partnership. But then when things really come up, or if you're not supported by your family or your circle, where do you go? And so I really like my doctorate was actually around this. My dissertation was around how to create a non-religious premarital format for couples to prepare for, those uncertainties. And this was pre lockdown. So a lot of people learned about their uncertainties during lockdown. A lot of couples got married because of lockdown, and a lot of couples didn't stay married. So that was really what sparked my interest in coaching. So I do not require it. I have a package where I say, hey, do 2 sessions with me as part of our working together. And then if you want to continue, great. And if not, that's okay too, and it's optional, but I have found that I've ended up coaching many of the couples I married after the fact. So that's why I started to add it as a bonus.
Sorry, I was muted there. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see. So we had
And
another.
and again, a lot of couples think, oh, you have to be religious to do premarital. And you don't. Like, I mean, if you go to learn how to drive a car and you have to get a license, you have to study. So why, I think there's a piece of throw the stuff on the table with someone neutral. that you're afraid to talk about or that you think are going to be like, the deal breaker, have someone that's caring and not attached to the result that can talk you through some of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, we had a couple more questions about the course, about how long it is. So altogether, I can't remember quite off the top of my head how long the length of the videos is. Each section has a video of the introduction of the background, and those can range anywhere from like 4 to 8 minutes per section. It also has a PDF portion, so if you don't want to watch the full video, you could read the text that's totally typed out, and there will be scripts for the demonstrations as well. If you don't want to watch the full video, or if you just want to reflect on the scripts, they have scripts in each section as well. Let's see. Don asked, do you perform ceremonial weddings for polyamorous individuals as well as legal weddings?
Oh, absolutely. I only left that part out of this particular presentation because we're speaking on multicultural and multi-faith. However, yes, I have done probably you name it, I've done it except for animals. But I did have a dog sign as a witness on one of my licenses recently, and I found out that that was legal. So that I thought was pretty cool.
Let's see. What else do we have? Okay, I think that's all the questions we had thus far. So if anyone had any other questions, now is the time to do so, as we still have about, 5 minutes before we log off. Let's see, we had another message come in. Lisa says very inspiring, so thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. I wish I could see all your faces. I don't see any of you, so I apologize.
Lots of thank yous. Okay, so I think we can go ahead and wrap things up a little bit early. I'm going to go ahead and pop things back into the chat section for the links to the course as well as the 50% off discount code. And we'll go ahead and put Samora's information if you want to reach out to Samora as well for anything that you might need regarding, interfaith and multicultural weddings. She is the person to go to for the subject. So.
Yes, I'm happy to, answer any questions. I feel as though it's been 15 years of experience, but I was born into it. So, so multicultured and multi-faith.
Okay, well, thank you all. If you enjoyed this class, be sure to attend one of our live events with Officiant Accelerator. As Samora mentioned before, she was one of our speakers during these Officiant Accelerator stops. We try to find local speakers throughout the country to bring some new educational topics to these officiant training events. It is an in-person event series by AMM in partnership with IEPWO, where you can learn how to deliver powerful ceremonies, build a successful practice in your community, join a network of passionate wedding professionals in a city near you. So we'll be heading to Atlanta next. After that, it's going to be Seattle, Chicago, and Jacksonville, Florida. So keep an eye out for that in the next few months and be sure to get your tickets ASAP from the AMM store. And once again, we went ahead and put all the information of the Interfaith course with links on how to purchase. You should have gotten that email and including the discount code that is valid as of now through the end of March. Get 50% off the Interfaith course. So thank you all for joining us, and thanks again, Samora. You all have a great rest of your day.